Now I'm going to turn the microphone over to my co-principal investigator, Paige Porritt, who's going to tell you a little bit more about the transplants in detail and its potential. Thank you.
Thank you to everyone for joining us today. It's been a privilege to lead this trial with Dr. O'Neill and represent our outstanding team before you today. I'll make a few comments about the transplant procedure, the impact of this work, and our vision for the future. There are two major phases of a uterus transplantation procedure. The first phase is time sensitive because the donor organ lacks blood flow as it's being transported from the donor to the recipient. Our top priority surgically in the operating room then is to join the blood vessels between the donor uterus and the recipient in order to restore blood flow to the organ. This is a critical event that we do day after day in all types of organ transplantation. The second phase after reperfusion is when we join the vagina of the donor with the vagina of the recipient. This connection is necessary for us to both monitor the health of the organ over time, as well as to provide access for embryo transfer. From the moment of transplant, the recipient starts immunosuppression medications, which we routinely use through other types of organ transplants. And after the organ is removed, these medications are discontinued. The impact of uterus transplantation is tremendous. In a few minutes, you're going to hear from Jen and Drew their exceptional story, and it will become abundantly clear to everyone in this room and listening to my words and their words what this transplant means to couples with uterine factor infertility. What is less obvious, perhaps, though, is how this trial benefits everybody. The trial has provided a unique opportunity to gain new and important knowledge about both pregnancy and transplantation. And a specific example of this is that we are currently using samples that we've obtained from the transplant to gain insight into cell types that are present in the uterus. And this is important because it's going to help us understand some of the fundamentals about how pregnancy works, as well as to help us better understand some very important and common pregnancy complications such as preeclampsia. This is but one example of how the research we're performing with uterus transplantation can benefit not only the women who directly receive a transplant, but also benefit and improve the health and well-being of women everywhere. Finally, I want to tell you about what comes next. With Benjamin's birth, Penn joins a very small group of medical centers around the world that offer the only known treatment for uterine factor infertility. Today, the Until trial at Penn is the only center in the United States that is actively recruiting patients. I want to say that again. The only center in a country of 300 million people that provides access to treatment for a disease that affects hundreds of thousands. That limited access is simply unacceptable. The path before us is therefore clear, and we expect that Penn is going to lead the effort to make this scientific miracle accessible to all. I'm exceptionally grateful to Regina and to Penn for their support of a patient population that has been largely underserved in this country and elsewhere in the world. Like pregnancy itself, uterus transplant is not without risk. But our trial demonstrates that it is safe, it is effective, and very importantly, it is reproducible in terms of its successful outcome. Dr. O'Neill and I today may have taken a few minutes of your time to educate you about uterus transplant. But over the course of this trial, it is very clear to us that our patients are the ones that have taught us about what uterus transplant means. This is an organ, what uterus transplant is fundamentally about is certainly about infertility, it's certainly about babies, it's certainly about innovation. But the most important lesson that our patients have taught us about what uterus transplant is it's about hope. And I don't think that there are any words of mine that can help convey this, but I want to use, before we hear from Jen and Drew, the words of a candidate who approached Dr. O'Neill to participate in our trial. One candidate said, and I quote but also paraphrase, "Women with no uterus have no hope. None. Let that sink in. None. Women who have fertility issues can say, "I'll keep trying. There are options." However, there is no hope for women without a uterus. To be left with absolutely no hope is like receiving a terminal diagnosis. You have nothing left to hope for. But now, hopefully, that will change. And now, it's a great privilege to show you, with Jen and Drew's help, what hope looks like from the people who lived this journey. Thank you.
I feel like I'm totally in a dream right now, and I'm having a lot of trouble believing it, but I'm really happy, and I'm just so excited for what's gonna happen next. I always wanted to be a mom. I think it was one of those things where it's like, I didn't find out that I couldn't be a mom until I was 17.
When Jen got the diagnosis, it wasn't, it'll be hard. It wasn't, you'll have to take extra steps. It was, it's not possible. She can't give birth. We could have had kids through a surrogate, we could have adopted, but Jen would never be able to carry children. And this thing that was impossible, Penn made it possible.
These women were told 10 years ago, you're born without a uterus and you'll never carry a child. And since then, uterus transplant has become a reality.
As a woman, it meant, kind of everything to me to be able to have that journey of becoming parents in the way that most people around you get to experience.
There's a lot that goes into performing a uterus transplant, teams of individuals, dozens of people that are involved. And the goal is, at the end of the day, to help this couple have a live-born child.
When I first walked away from her, that's kind of when I broke down.
I definitely was nervous, but I just kind of knew, okay, well, it's now and it's happening.
All right, Jen, ready? Let's do it.
So there's two major technical phases for a uterus transplant in the operating room. One is to actually sew the blood vessels from the donor organ to attach those to the recipient's blood supply. And the second other major phase is to actually establish the continuity between the donor vagina and the recipient's vagina.
It's just waiting. It's, I don't know, it's a stressful process. This is the scariest part, right? This is the part where things could really go wrong if they're gonna go wrong. So I'm just trying to keep my mind off that as best I can. I keep telling myself that these are the best doctors in the world, so that's what's keeping me okay.
It's really important to have great people in key positions when you try to orchestrate something of this magnitude.
There is a contained excitement, and it's really a feeling that I've never experienced in the operating room before.
I realized, I'm out of surgery, and I had a uterus transplant, and I think I just started crying. And then I was so excited that something I never thought would happen happened.
Hi, how are you?
Jen's embryos have been in the laboratory and were frozen, and this morning we are going to directly place one embryo back in Jen's uterus. Do you see that little flash, guys?
That was crazy.
Deep breath, Drew.
We're calling now.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi.
Do I have you both?
Yes.
Yes.
All right, the pregnancy test is positive.
Holy
I know, I'm going to cut right to the chase.
thank you for doing that.
I will never have the same feeling that I did in that operating room. Drew cried and was so appreciative of that baby, and Jen got to see Ben, and it was an incredible, incredible moment.
Jen and Drew are just the first of hopefully many hundreds, if not thousands, of people that we can help with this treatment. This is just the beginning.
People talk about miracles, and we got to not only have one, but witness the work and the people making a miracle happen.
Being able to have that first bath and that first bottle and that first holiday, they're little things, but it's cool to be able to experience them. Being parents was something we always hoped to be, and it's nice to have him home.